Check it out, guys. I made it back to the shop here. I just took possession of this thing. They loaded it in the back of my truck, and I'm gonna try to get this thing unloaded now. This is kind of cool seeing this, you know, like high claim item. Like I've never ordered anything like this really, so this is exciting. The box is kind of stove up. Looks like they set something on top of this and kind of crumpled the box. Hopefully everything inside is going to be all right. And looks like here someone wasn't too careful with the forklift at some point, but this thing probably exchanged hands multiple times on its way from California. So this thing's Santa Paula, California. Came a long ways from where we are now in Maine. So the thing fit in the shop, which was the main problem I was worried about. This is my small equipment side of the shop here. This is where I have most of my tools and everything. So I'm going to use this engine crane to unload that balancer, and this is what I used to load up the old balancer when I sold that. Don't mind the rust here, guys. I gotta get a new truck at some point. The rest of the truck looks like this too. So anyways, let's get this thing out of the truck somehow. It looks like they don't really want us to lift it from a strap, but that's exactly what we're gonna do. I get a laugh out of some of these little stamps that they put on this thing. Like, look, tire shop approved and tested. All right, so this thing, I don't have to worry about it then, because it's all approved. It's all set to go. All right, guys, this is what's in the box. Ranger DST2420. Some highlights of this thing. It's got a little cool little box here that you can put weights and stuff like that. It's got 4 cones. This thing, supposedly, you can do a 145-pound tire, which is pretty big. And according to this, you can do a 47-inch tire, which is pretty appealing to me. Also, this thing has an adapter to do motorcycle tires as well, and I'll probably end up buying that later. But also, you can do a rim up to 30-inch. So that's a pretty darn adequate setup for what I'm going to use. Without going on too much, another selling point is that this is a 110-volt or a 220-volt, so you can cycle between either one that you want. So, you know, usually 220 is more efficient than 110, but we can figure that out. That's a 1.5 horse motor. This also has the automatic wheel braking, which comes standard on these things. Things I don't like is that it has a belt. This is not one of the machines that has basically the motor attached to the spindle. This has a separate balancing spindle with a belt that connects to the motor, which, you know, it is what it is. In this price range for this machine, I paid right around $2,700 for this thing, with tax and everything else. It was like $2,520 or something like that by the time you pay tax. Shipping was free, so just figure like $2,660, whatever it is, $2,700. In this price range for this machine, you don't get a direct drive balancer like a Coates 1300, which, you know, I wanted a Coates that was basically the replacement of my 850. Was a 1300, but that's like $8,000, and I could barely justify spending this amount of money on this balancer because I don't really change enough tires, but I still wanted to have a balancer to complete the shop. So it's one of those things. You got to justify cost options as well. So this machine will be just fine for the amount of tires that I balance. And while we're talking about money, this is the invoice. I'm not going to show you all the other details because that's kind of personal, but as you can see here, $25.25. That was the price for the balancer. I paid $138.88 in sales tax. Total was $2,663.88. I bought this from NAPA. So the reason I bought this from NAPA primarily was because of ease of loading. Loading something like this in your back of your truck with a forklift is no problem. If I bought this machine online, things coming from California, almost guaranteed, are going to be in the back of a 53-foot van trailer, you know, semi-trailer. And where my new shop is, there's no getting a 53-foot box in my driveway. And on the side of the road, it's hard to do that on the side of this road with no shoulder. The NAPA in our area is huge. They've got a big, giant parking lot. They've got forklifts there. They unload big trucks all the time. So buying it through NAPA, one, I'm supporting a local business, which I always agree with that. I'm not supporting some obscure website, you know, that, you know, where, who knows where they are. But anyways, I'm supporting NAPA, local NAPA, and also it's a lot easier on me. All I gotta do is just drive to NAPA, they load me up with their forklift, and I'm on my merry way. So buying local definitely has its advantages. even think I needed those straps. Like, there's a lot of weight on the bottom of this crate. All right, guys, so here's a life hack I'll share with you. If you've got chains, windshield washer fluid containers are the best thing to store them in. Keeps them not tangled, keeps them out of the weather, out of, you know, you put the chain in the middle of the floor like this, it's always a mess. This is always right where you need it. Coiled up, and it's easy to hold on to with a handle. You can put them in the corner, they take up less room. And also I've got ropes here to keep the chains from wanting to go this way whenever I hoist this thing up in the air. And the reason I'm using ropes is because I don't really want this thing to get damaged any more than it already is. And I like ropes. A lot of people don't like using ropes. They think they ratchet straps are the best and whatever. But ropes are kind of old school. And I'll show you a trick real quick that I learned years ago that basically turned a piece of rope into a ratchet strap. So you basically start with a loop, and you can pull this thing as tight as you want. Obviously, we're not going to go too tight because we don't have any lift pressure yet. So what you do is you cinch the rope, you come in like this, you make a knot, and then you make another knot. Simple as that. So now when I lift this thing, these ropes are going to keep this from going that way. So one handy tool to have is a piece of 3/8 or 5/16 chain with a couple bolts through it. And I'll show you why. This doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. We're going to get it pretty darn close. That'll get us a little closer. There we go. That'll do the trick. So there's a good reason why they tell you not to lift this with a crane, and that's because you're putting a lot of stress on the box itself. But I don't really have a lot of options. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to get this thing up in the air enough to where I can slide the base back. Because right now, I'm pretty close to the ceiling. I might have to take that light down. Either take the light down or I have to shorten that chain. Alright, as you can see there, this thing weighs 356 pounds. I wonder how accurate that is. So on this handout, or flyer, whatever it is, here they're saying the shipping weight is 398 pounds. So I'm not really sure which one to believe. Okay, so I shortened the chain quite a bit. Let's try this again. Definitely not crazy about the sound this thing is making right now, but it's doing it. Let's get this thing on the ground as fast as we can. I got this thing suspended, I'm going to drop it down so if this thing does fall, it won't be quite so bad. And actually what I'm going to try to do is to put a lot of weight on the legs of the crane itself. So that way it's not like the crane has to hold all the weight from the pallet itself. The pallet can sit on the crane. As you can see, that didn't do this thing any favors. But I don't have a forklift, so short of doing this, I don't know what the next best thing would be. So this definitely is not a do as I do video. This is just how I'm doing this. As you can see, it didn't help the box at all, but I don't think it's going to hurt the balancer one bit. So I got to get in the box and see where I'm going to orient the balancer and see how I'm going to put this thing down. So I know this looks like butchery going on here, but I got to look in this box and see how the position of the thing might have to move or change. This is just thin like glue on, really cheesy thin wood. Basically, I just got to figure out how to orient this thing before I take it off the pallet. So, is that enough? Probably not. As luck would have it, I have this 180 degrees the wrong way, so I'm going to lift this up, spin it, and then set it back down. So as you can see, no matter where I orient the crate, there's not enough room to get the crate, not enough room to get the engine crane out from underneath the crate. So kind of in a pucker here, so we'll have to get creative with what we do. Alright guys, so luckily I have this old electric table. This thing came out of an old tannery whenever they shut down, and I kind of repurposed it, and this works for a lot of stuff. I've actually pulled transmissions out of vehicles with this thing. In the last bunch of months, it's been used for basically a catch-all. So anyway, this thing goes up and down. It's a great machine. I love this thing. So the plan is we're going to slide this underneath the crate, put the crate down on top of it, get the engine stand out of there, and then unbox the crate. That's not perfect, but we'll see if that'll do. Alright. A lot of noise. See what happens if we let this down. This is why they tell you not to use an overhead method of lifting. As you can see, a lot of damage to the box. Obviously, I ripped this myself so I could see in there and see what location this thing needed to be in. Yeah, the box was pretty damaged when I got it, so I don't think I hurt the box at all. You know, I did dent some of the corners, but hopefully the box is well enough designed to protect the machine. So let's get this top off and see what we got inside. Looks like there's plenty of room all the way around the crate. So even though we were a little aggressive taking the box out of the truck, everything looks good. This is what it looks like unboxed. It looks like it's been very well preserved. Nothing shows sign of damage. So that's kind of nice. That's always a good thing. And it looks like the wire, I should say, does not have a plug, so we're going to have to figure out if we want 110 or 220. That's no big deal. Looks like the hood comes disassembled, which is nice. That kind of makes it convenient. So I'm debating on whether or not to leave it on the pallet or to take it off the pallet and put it directly on the floor. I'm not quite sure what to do in that situation, so I guess we'll have to see if that pallet's worth anything, or see if that pallet's worth reusing. Ooh, this got a brake too. That's awesome. That's a brake to stop that wheel when you're putting weights on. Alright, so we got some stuff. Looks like the arm for the cover there. That goes down over the tire. We got some bolts holding this thing in. It's like a nice carriage bolt, 3/8 carriage bolt with a nice rubber isolator. That's kind of nice. Use that for something else down the road. So they got a nice metal shaft going through the center of that hood. You know, if you had a bunch of these, you could make some nice fenders for, like, you know, dump truck or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. So this box, I assume the cones and collars and stuff like that. I'm assuming the shaft for this. No, I was wrong. This is the bracket that holds the hood onto the machine. It's got a big spring in there. Okay, so the other stuff must be under the machine. Oh, come on. I assume, without even looking, this is going to be the gauge that measures the width of the rim. It's basically a big giant caliper. Let's look. See how wrong we are this time. Yeah, okay, so that's... So basically that measures the inside of the rim, so you can get the width of the rim. So that's kind of nice. I didn't have this on my old balancer, so that's nice. Some paperwork with the machine. Got a little diagram, shows you how to put the thing together. Shows you underneath there's a box with all the other stuff that's in there. Cool. Let me show you the actual balancer, guys. This is what you're looking at whenever you're going to be balancing tires. So that's kind of nice. Got a bunch of slots for my wheel weights, pliers and stuff like that. This is the slide that measures the inside offset. It's kind of nice. Looks like the shaft is probably underneath the machine with everything else. They got plenty of oil in there, that's for sure. So, as you can see, plastic on there that covers the screen. I might just leave that on there. It looks nice though. It looks like they also give you some sticky weights. 2 rolls of sticky weights. I probably will never use those, but maybe I will. I don't know. Those are black. That looks kind of cool. So maybe some of the rims. Looks like you got another little thing here. Probably they give you some more wheel weights. Oh, that's nice. Some 1 3/4 ounce weights. Looks like a mixture here. You got 2 3/4 ounce weights, 3 ounce weights. Looks like you got a little bit of everything in there. 1/2 ounce weights. So that's nice. That's a little grab bag of weights. And it looks like that's everything that's on the shelf here. It's the power switch. It's nice. Yeah, this thing looks pretty nice. That's where you change it from 110 to 220. There's a box under there. Wow, that's pretty thick metal, guys. That's like 3/16 plate. That's some nice stuff there. That's where a lot of the weight comes from, right there. That box. That's probably at least 60 pounds, maybe 50 pounds. I just want to see what it looks like underneath this. That's an up close and personal shot. It's pretty heavy, but it balances pretty good the way I've got it right now. Oh, let's look into this box, see what we got. Okay. Well, that's a pretty big ring. It's all covered in grease. All of this stuff is covered in grease. Oh boy, that's going to be fun cleaning all that off. Looks like there's the main shaft with a bunch of adapters right on there. There's a little hacking list. Looks like they give you a nice little pair of weight removal pliers, some concrete anchors, and a balance test. Looks like a weight there to probably calibrate the machine. So that's nice. It's going to take a while to clean off all these adapters. They're all covered in oil so they don't flash rust. So that's nice. Alright guys, because I'm really impatient and I called for help and no one is around right now because everyone's busy, which is no big deal, I'm going to try to do this myself. So basically I've got this nice shoulder on this lift and I've put a piece of 2x4 across and I've screwed these all down, so this is effectively a ramp now. We're going to try to walk this down, see what happens. It's not too heavy as it is awkward. And it's very awkward just because a lot of the weight is high, if you will. I got grease all over my hand. That worked really well. Went down on the ground with no problems. So I ended up welding. I ended up screwing another board there just for support, so this thing wouldn't. Didn't want this thing coming apart on me whenever I had that balancer on there. So now you can see the pallet. It's not much. That's basically going to go in the dumpster at this point. But I wanted to show you guys how beat up this pallet was. In case you couldn't tell when it was on the truck, the pallet was loaded the wrong way. So basically, the forks went through here at some point and destroyed the undercarriage of this thing. They were supposed to go through this way, where it wouldn't hurt anything. So anyway, long story short, plywood's probably not even worth saving. I was looking at maybe using that piece for something, but it's kind of a low dollar plywood. And this is all plywood. It's not even a good pallet, so probably just going to throw that right in the dumpster and call it a day. At least the balancer is on the ground where I want it. That's about where the old one was, and I'll shuffle it around as I need. Alright guys, so I'm going to start putting this thing together. I'm not going to go into great detail on putting this together simply because like there's a lot of YouTube videos already out there about the assembly process. Essentially, I'll just break it down real fast. There's a bracket that bolts on here for the hood. There's the balancing arm that bolts on here. Yes, that's right, it bolts on. I'm not too crazy about that. But you bolt on that dingus that sticks on there. And let's see, this arm gets bolted onto the box that's there. And a few other things. And basically, oh, one thing that I do have to point out, if I hadn't already, you do need a plug that goes on this cord. That determines whether you use 110 or 220. So let me show you guys what's involved in putting this thing together. Alright guys, so the balancing shaft on this machine, the balancing shaft on this machine has a nice cap bolt, and on this spindle there's an alignment mark that matches an alignment mark on this shaft. Now this stuff was all packed in, like, I feel like it's Cosmoline, some sort of grease. It's really kind of nasty stuff, so took quite a while to clean it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to assemble this. I feel like that's a pretty good thread there. Let's see. Is it going to be metric? Maybe not. So it's actually a 12 millimeter. Fits that just perfect. So I was going to put some anti-seize compound on there, but with the amount of grease that they put on this thing, I don't think this thing is ever going to need any sort of lubrication. So the idea is those two alignment dots, you pretty much get those perfect together. I don't know really how you're supposed to torque that, because there's really no great way of holding that. So we're going to try this strap wrench, and it may or may not work. I don't know. That's able to get a little more torque, but the thing still wants to spin pretty freely. Well, I guess I've got a chain wrench that I could put on this, but I don't really want to ruin the finish. I guess that's going to be good for now. We'll see if the instructions have any sort of torque spec. That's crazy. That even marked out a little bit. Took some paint off. Oh well. I'm going to try using this brake down here to torque this nut. I don't know if that thing's going to be strong enough to hold. We'll find out in just a minute. Not really. See, that's not really enough. I can still turn that thing, no problem. So, let me just show you guys. This is the instruction manual right here. It says, locate the faceplate, threaded main shaft, and mounting bolt in the accessory box and install as shown. Step number 2, locate and align the mating marks on the faceplate and shaft assembly. Down here it says, be sure to tighten the bolt firmly. Step on the manual brake to hold the shaft while tightening the bolt. So it doesn't really give you a torque spec or anything. That kind of makes me a little worried, but I guess I could always put the impact gun on there and make sure it's tight, but be sure to tighten the bolt firmly. So I'm guessing from what the instructions say, you're supposed to step on this brake and you're not supposed to be able to turn that, because that doesn't really feel like that's doing a lot. I mean, my foot's pretty much pushing that thing all the way to the floor. Now, I don't really know as if that would be designed to stop that against a lot of torque, but maybe that's out of alignment, or maybe that's out of adjustment. So anyway, on to the next thing. So I was opening up this little bag of goodies. I noticed that there was something in here I wanted to show you guys. So they give you a probably like the cheesiest set of wheel weight pliers I've ever seen, but hey, something to use, I guess. They give you these little wedge anchors for the concrete, so that I won't be using those, but That's cool, I guess. One thing I wanted to show you, they give you an Allen key, and I assume that's what they want you to use to torque that thing. So I don't know how firmly they want you to torque this thing, but you can't be torquing it very firmly if you're using, you know, a short little tool like that. Anyway, then they give you some other things, you know, like looks like some sort of cone protector. If you want to put the cone with a spring in here, this is what goes up against the rim. They give you a short little Allen wrench like this. I assume this is for the hood bracket. So and they give you one of these. Looks like a big old wheel weight. That must be for the calibration whenever you actually have to recalibrate this thing. So anyway, they also provide you this. Now, this mounts on the spindle itself. Obviously, you take out those cap bolts. And then that would allow you to mount a tire on there with a larger diameter bore. Some applications, this might be neat. Maybe a dually wheel, not quite sure. We'll mess with that. That bracket bolts right to the back of the machine, pretty straightforward. Now, they do give you a lot of wire here. I would suggest, just looking at this real fast, I would suggest taking and pulling that wire underneath. Sorry about the camera angle, but leaving the wire underneath like this, because it looks like it could very easily get pinched in that mechanism whenever that hood opens and closes. So it'd be better to leave that right out of the way so you don't have any pinched wires down the road. So I just wanted to show you guys this. I was working on putting this arm on here for the hood, and listen, they give you a rain stick. How thoughtful. I wonder how rusty that metal was whenever they put this thing together. And those aren't the washers making that noise. Alright guys, so check it out. That's pretty much all assembled. The only thing I have to do is wire up a plug to this thing and I can fire it up and check it out. So everything seems to function okay. You know, that foot brake does a good job of stopping that wheel. I mean, I don't usually use a foot brake anyway, but whenever you're putting weights on the wheel, that can be pretty handy just to hold the wheel while you're pounding the weight on the tire, so, or on the rim, I should say. So it did come with this thing, which is kind of cool. You know, this is a good gauge to measure the inside of the rim if you don't measure the rim before you put the tire on. That's kind of a handy tool to have. And they gave you these boxes of wheel weights, which are nice. I just wanted to show you though, they look kind of deceiving because it looks like you're getting a huge box, but then it's like, oh, you get a tiny little coil of weights. Kind of like the potato chip factory, you know, you're getting a big old bag of potato chips and it's like half full. So, but hey, you know, that's a nice feature to throw in there, you know. So, you know, it is one of those things. I can't complain too much. That's a nice feature. Oh. Let me show you this. I did put the cones on their designated little brackets. So 1, 2, 3, 4 cones. Those all stack up nice. Now this is basically going to be where the balancer sits. Right now I'm in the middle of construction on the rest of my building there, so I've got my table saw and chop saw in the way. But you know, this is kind of my tire center, if you will. And I've got a set of 4 tires here that I'm going to mount here pretty soon and balance. We'll give this thing a try. So this, I mean, I don't think this hood is going to do much. Like my old Coates machine, that had a really nice hood that covered the whole tire. But this thing like only covers just the top. But hey, it'll help keep a lot of dust and dirt down. So, I mean, that's kind of nice. Definitely feels a little cheesy, but I mean, it is what it is. This is not a high-end machine. This is not, however, a low-end machine either. This is kind of middle of the road. And this is what I could afford, and I think this is going to be a great balancer for what it is. I'll have to plug it in and show you guys how everything works, but basically, you know, you got your, you enter your digits here for all your different parameters for your wheel, and it looks like you got a few different adjustments there for where you can put the wheel weights. So, I'll show you more. So for the first test of this new tire balancer, we just ordered some new tires for the old glass rack truck. This is basically a rack engineered and designed for the glazing industry. We haul big sheets of glass. So anyway, we've got new tires for this old girl, and we are going to balance them and show you how that new balancer works. These are the old tires here. I've already got them changed out, as you saw. What we have now is a brand new set of BFGs. BF Goodrich all-terrain TAs. These are the KO2 versions. So those are a nice load range E tire. They should be pretty darn sturdy. They have a load range E. Good for a lot of weight. Took a little time and I put all my wheel weights back in. I also put in the complimentary wheel weights that they gave me, so I got a nice little selection now. I just wrote on there, you know, with paint marker what the weights are, so it's nice and organized. I got my sticky weights there. Everything looks nice that way. So I'm getting ready to plug this thing in. What I ended up doing was I went with a 220 receptacle. Now, it says in the manual that, you know, several times that this thing is most efficient if it's used with 220. So you come back here and just make sure that this little switch is in fact on 220 before you plug this thing in. So I've gone ahead and wired in dedicated 20 amp outlets for this thing. So I've got one there, and I've got another matching outlet down there. So this is a 2-branch circuit. So anyway, getting ready to plug this in for the first time. Let's see how it goes. Power button's down here. So the thing's beeping at us. Now, on the video it looks like this thing is flickering and flashing. In reality it's not. So I don't know what's going on with that, but these things are doing their flashy thing, but the numbers are nice and constant. So anyways, let's get a tire. Oh, I also wanted to show you guys, this is pretty darn slick. Check this out. If you just move this lever, it detaches the threads from that wing nut. So you don't have to sit there and literally thread that thing on for every inch of that whole shaft. You can just move it along, and it saves a lot of time. So that's pretty darn slick. So these tires are pretty darn heavy. So, see if this balancer, see how stable this balancer is once I get this thing spinning. Looks like that's the right cone. Now you always gotta be kind of somewhat careful putting your tire on here. You don't want to jam it around too much. That's slick. I've always found if you just kind of spin it around, reseat it, makes for a lot truer balance. I always like to just spin the tire and just look for visible defects on the tire, make sure the thing actually is running true before I go through and balance it. So to get this first distance, you put this thing where the wheel weight's going to be. So we're at like 7.5. 7.5. So we'll go over here. 7.5. The width, you can use this little giant caliper that they gave us. And this one is 7.5. 7.5, and this is a 17-inch rim. So, we plugged in all our inputs. Let's see what happened. Put the hood down. Now, you can also adjust this thing so as soon as you put the hood down, the thing will start to balance. but I kind of like having the ability to control it. Ooh, quiet. Makes a lot of noise on the braking cycle, but that looks like it's a pretty true balance. So it's calling for 50 ounces on the inside, 75 ounces on the outside. So let me just tell you something. So let me just talk to you real quick about wheel weights, guys. I am never too proud to reuse a wheel weight. Some guys will tell you, oh, that's cheesy. You know, you can't reuse wheel weights. But listen, wheel weights these days are very expensive for what they are. It used to be that wheel weights were relatively affordable, but like the old school lead wheel weights like this, they don't exist anymore. Now they're all replaced with steel. So anyway, they're expensive for what they are. So as long as the clamp is in good shape, I'll reuse these things, no problem. Especially if it's for my own stuff. You know, if it's one thing if you got a customer's vehicle and they have really nice looking rims, yeah, use the new wheel weights. But for the most part, I mean, these steel wheels, you can get away with using those just fine. So I've gone ahead and I balanced this. Let's see if this thing trues up. Perfect. So as you can see now, it's calling for 0 ounces on both sides. So that tire is successfully balanced. It didn't call for a lot of weight, which is great, because the old ones, the weights that I took off these tires were very minimal, so that's reassuring. So let's do the other one and check this thing out again. This is exciting. This thing works great. My old Coates balancer was very similar, just a little higher quality, but other than that, this works just about the same. All right, got this other tire all mounted up. See what this thing calls for. So this one did call for a little more, 2 1/4 ounces and 3/4 of an ounce. Now this one did not have the TPMS sensor in it, and I think that might have changed a little bit. But I did pull off. This is the weight I pulled off. This is a 2 1/2 ounce. So to be expected. Okay, so I just balanced this one. See what happens. Whoop. So that one, see, it's calling for more weight. I'm going to take all those weights off again and rebalance this one. I don't want to be chasing weights. So I'm going to rebalance this one. Took all the weights off. This should give us 2 1/4 and 3/4 ounces again, if this thing is true. Okay, perfect. If you can read that, 2 1/4 and 3/4. Okay, must have just put the 1/4 ounce in the wrong spot. As you can see there, it balanced out. Okay, I just got those 2 tires balanced. The balancer did great, happy with the way it works. The only thing is that's kind of funky is on this shaft here, there's something on the threads itself near the middle that always kind of fetches, which that'll wear off, I'm sure. And I've tried the other dies, and it's the same on each die. Nothing too crazy, just one of those things that you pick up on. But yeah, this thing works great. It does have a plasticky, like, protective stuff on there. It's almost like the stuff on like a cigarette carton. Anyway, that's there. I'm probably going to leave it there until it finally just wears off. But I mean, the thing works great. I'm happy with it. Now, like I said, you can make this so as soon as you put the hood down, it turns on. I don't like that feature, though. I think that's kind of obnoxious, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. This thing works okay. It's a little bit wobbly, you know, but this thing is only goes in half increments. So like my Coates, you could go like, you know, 7.6 or whatever it is. This one, you're pretty much 7, 7.5, 8. So you get close, and that's pretty much fine. So I've balanced those 2 tires. I've got 4 more tires. Those are actually 19s. Those are for a Ford, some sort of Ford car I've got in the near future. So we'll get those mounted up and we'll give it a try on some sticky weights, because I believe we're going to be using sticky weights on those rims. Now, just a quick thing. To do a dynamic balance like, your typical steel rim here, you'll notice how none of these are lit up. So F is the function. See how it goes now from static to aluminum 1, 2, and 3. When it's not lit up, you're in dynamic mode. All right, now we've got this little Ford Escape in the shop here. This thing has 19-inch tires. And as you can see, I've already changed them out. Now we're going to go balance them. These are the wheels, 19-inch rims, kind of fancy. These particular rims here take a 235, 55, 19. Now these ones had a combination of wheel weights on the outside lip and also sticky weights on the inside. So, looking over here, I think this aluminum 2 is going to be the closest thing that we can come to for that. So we'll give it a shot. All right, so that one was kind of a pain. As you can see, it zeroed. That's my phone ringing. I had to chase a lot of weights on this one, and this does have a bend in the rim. I don't know if you can see that or not. So that made it a little more difficult. Let's try another one. So I got another one done, and this one's kind of irritating. I don't know what's going on, but it keeps having me chase weights around. I might have to do the weight location test, which I can probably outline if I have to end up doing that. But it is what it is, I guess, for now. You're supposed to put the weight basically perpendicular to the shaft here, and I don't know what's going on if that's 100% accurate, but I got to find a 15-inch rim to do that test with, so I might do that a little later on. Something's definitely going on with this balancer. As you can see, that took me quite a long time to balance that wheel. I just having to keep chasing weights. I am convinced that I got to do that position test on this thing. But I just wanted to show you guys what I do. Like, these sticky weights are really expensive to buy. So I just take duct tape and I'll put the weight on with duct tape first. So if you're doing stuff like this and you put the weight in the wrong spot or you got to take weight off, it's really easy to do that with the duct tape and then just mark where it is, take the duct tape off, and you're good to go. All right, this is the last one. I just got that balanced. One thing I do want to show you guys, because you got to check these dimensions periodically, because what happened is if I go like this, you can see how it flashes real quick, the distance, width, and diameter. See, it goes 4.5, 8.2, 19. I just checked that and it was off because I'd enter 19, but I'd go like this and it would say 14 instead of 19, which is kind of bizarre. So anyway, you kind of have to go through and double check the dimension on this thing. Whenever it says like this R button must be like refresh or reread or something. Anyway, still though, I tried it again and I'm still putting weights almost opposite. So something's wrong with the balancer. I got to mess with it some, but at least it's balancing out the tires. I got to find now a balance rim. Alright, so I just got done balancing another set of wheels. These are 18-inch wheels for a Lexus, one of my customers. And I'm still having an issue chasing weight. As you can see on this one, I've got duct tape holding the weight on because I have to move the weights around so much. I've got duct tape holding the weight on, and once I get them in the final position and I get it zeroed, I'll then mark with a pencil where the weight goes, pull the duct tape off, put the weight back on. It saves a lot of wheel weight. Not quite sure what's going on. I think I'm going to have to do the position test with the balancer and the calibration. So I'm going to have to find a 14 or 15-inch steel wheel with a good tire. And I think what's happened is that it's just the computer doesn't recognize where I put the weight. Because you're supposed to put the weight top dead center. Top dead center of that pivot. And I think what's happening is that the computer just doesn't recognize where I put the weight is in the right spot. So anyway, that's just kind of standard, typical procedure stuff that you're supposed to do every so often. So I guess I'll just try that. Because right now, it just takes too long to balance these tires. I mean, I've got probably half an hour invested in just balancing 4 tires. I mean, this should be, you should be able to put the weight on, respin it, and it should just be able to be 0 after putting, you know, 2 sets of weights. So the inner and outer weights, once you put those on, it should be able to balance out after you put the weight on. But what's happening now is that it's just calling for more weight, and then it's just like you're chasing it. So it's just, you're using more weights than you really need. So it's time to try and get this machine calibrated. Now, the instructions are kind of misleading. Here it says, whenever we're talking about the weight location test, it says use a standard 14-inch steel wheel. But then down here it says note a standard 14/16-inch steel rim with or without a tire is recommended for this procedure under the self-calibration. So do I use a 14, 15, or 16? I don't think it really makes a difference. However, I just happen to have an old Honda Civic wheel. This is a 14 by 5.5. So I bought one of these El Cheapo tires on eBay for like $40. 185, 70, 14. I'm going to mount this up, and this will forever be my calibration setup. So we'll just pick a spot. How about right there? That looks good. This should balance with needing 100 grams or 3.5 ounces, which it does not, as I suspected. Okay, so here you see it's calling for 2.5 on the outside and 1 on the inside. According to this manual, it's supposed to only call for 3.5 ounces on the outside to counterbalance the 3.5 that we put on. So that's 100 grams or 3.5 ounces. So we have to do a calibration. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay guys, I know there's a bunch of videos out there on how to calibrate this thing, but let me just show you what the manual says. So we're going to press the R and start button simultaneously until something happens. Error 5. Okay, I must not have held it long enough. Okay, so calibrate, calibrate. Now, it says close hood, press the start button. The wheel will spin. All right, so let's go like this. We're going to start it, and it's going to want us to add that 3.5 ounce weight on the inside. So there it says 3.5 ounces. Now, I know that's flashing for you guys, but that's a steady light for me. Right there, it's calling for 3.5 ounces on the inside. Top dead center, 12 o'clock. Right there. Now, what it wants us to do is to press start again. And we'll press start again. Now it wants us to add 3.5 ounces on the outside. So, according to the manual, we have to take off this weight that we just put on. And we have to add right there 3.5 ounces to the top, 12 o'clock, to this one. Now it's saying after we start this again, it'll be calibrated. So end calibration. They're claiming this thing now is calibrated. Let's test it. So it says in the manual, to verify calibration, leave weight on the outer side that we just put on there and do the weight location test. So basically what that is we're going to start this tire because we know this is balanced. And it's going to want 3.5 ounces, hopefully on just the outside edge this time. Perfect. That's what we've been wanting forever. Okay, so let me bring you over here. It's flashing, I know, but it says 3.5 on the outer. So, as you can see, this is 3.5 ounces. Now, right there, it wants 3.5 ounces opposite that. So this is finally functioning perfectly. So I'm happy it's not a software issue or anything like that. I'm happy that this is done and behind us. So that's not a very good wheel weight that they gave us. It's already cracked, as you can see. But I can find another 3.5 ounce wheel weight. I'm sure I probably even have one. But so anyway, I got another set of tires to mount and balance. Let's get at those. Okay, so I got a set of tires here for an old Ford Ranger. This guy got some cheap tires on eBay and mounted them himself, and he wants me to balance them. So let's see what happens with this one. Holy smokes, 3.25 ounces on the outside and 1/2 ounce on the inside. Wow. All right, let's get at it. Okay, so first weight test. After the calibration, I've got 1/2 ounce here. I've got 3.25 ounces on this side, which is a lot, but let's see if this balanced 0 now. Hopefully this will do it on the first time. Perfect. That's what I've been striving for right there. Okay, I got 4 more tires. I'll try them, and hopefully it's the same situation on everyone. Those are done. This machine's good. I'm gonna go try something else for a while. I'm sick of balancing tires.